Council and to everyone here, and good evening to all of you. Is this question of under what circumstances, if any, is the town council obligated to comply with the requirements of the State Public Records Act? And I wrote a letter to Bonnie. I assume you've gotten that letter. That was dated October 3rd. And basically, the short answer is that the town council does not have an obligation to comply with the Public Records Act. And that's because state law requires local agencies to have to comply with those terms. And local agencies means cities and counties. And if you have a group, such as a town council, as this is, which is not a legislative body, you're not getting any money from the county, nor is this town council created by the county. It is an advisory body to the 5th Supervisorial District of the Board of Supervisors. That's it. As I assume members of the town council have also seen the letter that Bonnie sent and the things that she's asked for. As many of you may know, I worked as a lawyer for the city of Los Angeles for almost 31 years. And we dealt with Public Records Act requests frequently, and they can be quite onerous in having to comply with the terms of such requests. And consequently, the law is set out in a way that those rules that require that the public's business be done in public and that records be made available has a limited scope of its purview, and that is to legislative bodies that are established, say, by a legislative body. If there had been a vote of 3 members of the Board of Supervisors to create this town council, then you'd be subject to the Public Records Act, but you're not. So you're not getting any money from the county. You're not created by a vote of the majority of the supervisors, and therefore there isn't a legal obligation to comply with Bonnie's request. If you choose to do so otherwise, that's up to the town council, but there's no legal obligation.
And I know some of Bonnie's questions had to do with the fundraising for Castaic Days and the 5K race. I believe our treasurer's reports are available upon request. I mean, there's some in the media have asked something to hide because we don't have anything to hide. The donations are all there. The disbursements are all there. We take enough money to cover our expenses, and we try to give everything else back to local organizations, schools, charities in the community, scouts, whatever. So that's available. But we use our own computers, our laptops at home on this stuff, and to go back and compile all those records could take days, weeks, and we're volunteers. So I think Keith has answered that question. Any questions from the council? All right. The second thing I wanted to address, because it's been brought up, and since you're here, we, at our last meeting, passed by a vote of 6-4, we approved a memorandum of agreement to set up a nonprofit organization to disperse mitigation fees if the new landfill CUP is approved. And there was complaints that, according to our bylaws, that was a contract, and therefore, because we did not have a 2/3 vote, that it was not valid. In the section in question, there's language like, it does say contracts must be authorized and executed by a 2/3 vote. It has to be fully funded. The town council may not borrow money or incur indebtedness. And my understanding of this section of the bylaws has to do with contracts for services, contracts for goods, contracts where the town council is required to make an expenditure, thus the words fully funded. The memorandum of agreement is to set up a separate corporation which will receive funds, and I want to be clear on this, especially since we're filming. The town council will never, ever have a dime of these mitigation funds should the project go forward and should the organization be set up. That's why we're setting up a separate entity to deal with that. It will never go in our bank accounts. We will never be responsible for deciding or dispersing those funds. And so I just wanted to get your take, because I know we're going to hear some feedback on that tonight, as to my understanding of the difference between this contract, which I believe in the bylaws, these sections were set up so that we didn't go spend crazy and bankrupt the town council. And so between my understanding of the contracts and my understanding of this memorandum.
Well, let me start by saying that a contract legally is a meeting of the minds between two people where there's something of value exchanged between the parties. That's kind of a general definition of what a contract is. In the case of the bylaws, where it talks about contracts being authorized and executed by a 2/3 vote, this is in Article 4, Section 2 of your bylaws. It then says that those contracts are to be fully funded. So implicit in adding Section B about them being fully funded is that we're not talking about the entire universe of contracts, which would include the memorandum of agreement, but we're talking about contracts for services, something that could be fully funded. This memorandum of agreement is such that it doesn't make sense to talk about it being fully funded. It's as you know, an agreement that says that a certain amount of funds will come from the landfill operator to this community for community improvements over maybe a 20 to 30 year period, and therefore the 2/3 requirement, as I see it, wouldn't apply to the memorandum of agreement.
And I'd like to put, I've been on the council for 6 years, and anybody else that's been around that long, I don't remember ever anyone pointing out that we needed to have a 2/3 vote for anything. Although we have voted on contracts. We voted on T-shirts for the race. We voted on an accountant to clean up the tax mess we had, and we're now current and our back taxes are paid. We voted on companies to come do the timing and put the little plastic chips in your shoes when we run the 5K. Never before has this 2/3 thing ever been brought up. In fact, we voted to allocate money to retain you. We had 7 votes, thankfully, but that day, no one brought up the 2/3 majority. It's only after this agreement was passed that now this has surfaced, and so I appreciate your interpretation and your feedback on that.
You're very welcome. And I want to say that I really feel that it is an honor to be able to do work for this town council. As some of you may know, I've lived in this community for 25 years. I've served on the town council in Stevenson Ranch. I've been head of my homeowners association for a dozen years. And so I've been very active in my community life here in the Santa Clarita Valley. And I understand what it means, the sacrifice that's involved for each of you who are on the town council, as well as your families, to come to these meetings and to try to benefit your community in the way that you are doing. And so it is both a pleasure and an honor for me to assist you in your task and the community at large, represented, of course, tonight by the people here in the audience.
Thank you, Keith. Very glad to have you. Questions?
Well, one thing that we probably should do is change the bylaws to specifically state contracts of purchasing items, not.
We are in the process of revising the bylaws, and that actually came up before this was ever an issue. We decided in the revision that we obviously haven't presented the revised agreements or the revised bylaws yet for a vote. But before this ever became an issue, and Sandy will back me up, we said we want to get rid of anything here that says a 2/3 majority, only because it's so hard to get. We've had instances where we have not had sitting council members. We haven't been able to get people to come and run. I want to thank everyone in the audience tonight that submitted an application to be a council person. And so getting that 2/3 majority without the bodies has been hard. So Sandy, we discussed going through the bylaws, and anywhere that was, just removing it to a simple majority vote. So, yes.
And then the other question is, in the memorandum agreement, there's a requirement for that group to follow the Brown Act. So how does that apply to them but not apply to town council?
Well, again, that memorandum of agreement is a contractual agreement, again, between the landfill operator and the town council. So, for instance, this town council could put in its bylaws, you know what, we want everyone in this community to know that everything's above board, and we're going to, even though we're not legally obligated to comply with the Public Records Act, we'll put in our bylaws that we'll comply with it anyway. I wouldn't recommend you do that because of the hardships that might be entailed in complying with some requests that might come through. So, the reason that you have in the memorandum of agreement a requirement to comply with the Brown Act, which is really making the information of the entity you create available to everyone in the community. That was a contractual agreement between the landfill operator and the town council, that will be done. Although I haven't analyzed it completely, I think generally in theory it's a really good thing, because if you're going to have, as we hope and expect, several $100,000 per year for decades coming into this community, you don't want it taken over by somebody to use as their personal slush fund. You don't want it improved just so somebody who is on some governing committee can improve their property at the expense of others in the community, be all day long. And it's important that the way money is allocated be done in an open and forthright manner, and that questions about it are available, are answerable to the public. And I think that that's the thought behind why the Brown Act would be complied with in terms of this agreement.
Right, and the Brown Act would be complied with by the new entity. Right. And I think we have some precedent or history here, because we have a current agreement and a Community Benefits Fund Committee in Valverde. And so, for example, the landfill is familiar with that. And as I understand it, the meetings are not public or only occasionally public?
Only occasionally.
Only occasionally public. And I'm not making any kind of accusations, but there have been discussions in the past that there was some funds that there was questions about where they went. And so I think what the landfill operator is, they're laying down terms in this agreement, not for us, but for the new Castaic CBFC, that the meetings have to be open and public, that the officers have to file the Form 700s, that they have to comply with the Brown Act. In other words, if you're going to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to the community, the landfill is trying to set it up so that we don't make mistakes, so that it has to be transparent, completely open and available to everybody, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, that's a different entity than what we are.
And I agree, I think it's better to be open about, especially
And-
if it's like involved.
Right. But again, this council does a race. We raise anywhere over the last 5 years between $7,000 and $20,000. You can look at the records, see where the checks go, who the money goes to. It goes back to the community. It goes back to nonprofits in the community. It's all accounted for, but $20,000 is not $400,000. And that body its function would be to distribute that money solely. There would be a lot of people vying for that money. Whereas we make the choices to support the organizations that support the race, there would be people applying for that money, which leaves a lot more room for error. So I agree with the landfill's terms in the agreement to say we would like this new nonprofit organization, which will distribute the funds, to act in this manner, to comply with these terms. And so I think the more terms the better. Because again, we're looking As I envision it, we're looking at money for 25 to 35 years, and one of the reasons that it was written into the agreement that no more than 20% could be saved in any given year. The idea would be to spend it and not stockpile a lot of money where there could be abuse. But what I would like to see happen with this organization is for them to take that 20% and save it. If you did that over 25 or 30 years, you might be able to have enough money in the bank to just take the interest every year and take now a 25 or 30-year litigation fund and allow it to contribute to the community in perpetuity. And so, anyway, that was not, we did not write that in there. The landfill put that in the agreement, and I think the more oversight for this committee, the better, again, based on precedent and what we've seen in the past.
That's good.
Okay?
And what,
Keith, I want to...
can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
It came up at the meeting about if this contract is ever breached, the landfill could actually come after us for breach of contract, which means not just the loss of money, but damages, whatever. If that happens, who's responsible? Is the CATC responsible, or is the organization responsible?
Well, first of all, when we're talking about an agreement, we're talking about this memorandum of agreement.
Yes.
So, it wouldn't be a breach of how the money gets spent, because that's another entity that's going to get those funds. So, as I understand it, the essence of what this is that the community of Castaic will get some benefit of the fact that this landfill, not too many miles away, is going to be operating. There are a lot of safeguards that are going to go into trying to protect this community from odors, from air pollution, from other potentially negative impacts of that landfill. So what would be a breach? In this case, what the community is saying is we will support the landfill if we're going to get some community benefit out of it. And there is precedent for that. I worked on that precedent when I was working for the city. We did it at Lopez Canyon Landfill. We closed that landfill actually about 5 or 7 years before it was full, but we gave the community a benefits fund. And this is basically the same thing. So what would be a breach? A breach is, yeah, we'll take the money, but we're going to go down to the Board of Supervisors and oppose your project. Beyond that, I don't know how the town council would potentially be in violation of the terms of the agreement.
What about, for instance, the 20% we don't spend the 20, we don't save, or let's say we save more than 20%, we don't spend it all, and it's a breach of contract because the contract specifically states you have to spend everything but 20%.
But the responsibility of seeing that that's done, and I'll look at this more carefully, and we'll talk about it at a future meeting, but the responsibility for seeing that that gets done, we will put onto that entity that we have yet to create, that nonprofit.
Okay, but the liability is still with the council because we signed the document, correct?
Yeah, but over and over again in the agreement, it says that if we don't comply, they're going to cease funding.
It also says that they can bill us for legal fees.
Right, and it talks about going to arbitration, and if someone goes to court, if they cease funding and we were to take them to court, then they could come after us for legal fees. But basically what the agreement says, and this is not unusual in land use issues, whether it's an airport, whether it's a landfill, whether it's a high school, whether it's a sewage treatment plant, there are things that we need in our community to function as a community, but nobody wants them near them. And so you have these mitigation agreements. And the mitigation agreement from the landfill says, we are asking for your support. In return for this mitigation, if you don't support it, we will cease funding. Do you really think that they would come after us for legal fees or otherwise? Or do you think they would just say, you know what, no more money?
Legally, they can come after us, and we signed a contract that says they can. That's the main thing.
But as a practical matter, this town council doesn't have much money. You have what you raise every year. And so the term that we often use in the law is, you're judgment proof. You know, I was once in a courtroom, and the bailiff said, you know, when you get a judgment, it's really not anything more than a hunting license. And it's the town council that has agreed, not each member of the town council as an individual. So I wouldn't lose any sleep over it at night. But I'd be glad to talk to you about it at greater length, if you'd like.
Okay. My main concern is that the current ownership of the landfill and the current management of the landfill, in 1997, when the Valverde agreement was signed, it's different than it is right now. And a lot of these verbal agreements somehow disappear. They're just kind of lost. One side says one, the other side says another. So I just don't want that to happen. It's my main concern.
You know, you are absolutely correct, and some of us that have been, you know, practicing law for a while like to say, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. I mean, technically, you can try to prove up the terms of an oral contract, but good luck. So, I agree. And you've seen firsthand the consequences of not putting things in writing.
Yes. The ownership and the companies have changed, but the money is still coming under the current agreement?
Money is, but the promise where they sat down at the table and they said, we're going to close and we're not going to ask for another expansion, that is up in the air. And the resident that sat at the table says, yes, you guys agreed to this, but on paper, it's very gray. And I'm just trying to make sure that everything's just clear, we don't have problems in the future, because Flo, you and the rest of us, 20, 25, 30 years down the line, we're not going to be sitting here. So we want to pass on something to...
And I'm hoping that 20 or 25 years down the line, the people in Castaic that are benefiting from these funds, including the people of Valverde, say, I want to thank the leaders from back then for having the vision to make sure that these funds stayed in our community instead of going to the county.
And I agree with you. I think that's
With that, Mr. Pritzker, thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, good night.
Okay. And we have request to speak forms in the back. I only have one on this topic. Susie, I'm so sorry I didn't get to you last time. Come on up. Yes.
Okay. He was very informative, and he also brought a lot of questions up. Just an observation from the last couple of meetings I've been to. You look around the room, and I can see 7 people from Valverde, and I'm guessing that 5 are from Castaic. Is it normal for you to have this many people here?
We're grateful that you're here.
Okay. Is it normally this many, or is this unusual?
When there is a contentious issue, I can fill this room every time.
Okay. I was just curious. Okay. Does the Chiquita Canyon landfill give money to the Lions Club? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Absolutely. The Chiquita landfill sponsors dozens of organizations.
Okay.
And
So,
if you want that information, if you ask John, he'll give you a list of.
okay, it's just something that popped in my head while I was sitting here. So if the Lions Club gets money from Chiquita, are any of you on the board of the Lions Club?
I'm the vice president,
You're
yes.
the vice president. So you are benefiting from the money from Chiquita Canyon landfill for the Lions Club.
No, the money they donate feeds seniors at Thanksgiving that don't have anywhere else to go.
That's all it does?
That's what it does. Oh, and they donate money to the Santa float.
Or what?
The Santa float, the float that goes,
Okay, because I'm just curious, because I read your bylaws, which you guys are obviously going to change. And it just says in Article 14, Section 1, grounds for removal. A failure to remove oneself from a vote where a director knowingly has a conflict of interest regarding the parties or issue involved. And I'm just curious about how the Lions Club connects with, Castaic connects with you guys that
It's
are.
candy canes. We're getting bribed with candy canes.
Pardon?
We have a candy cane issue. We get 4,000 candy canes to feed the kids from the landfill, and that's gonna go swing or go.
No, I'm trying to figure out the connection between.
I know what you're trying to do.
in
candy canes does not make any sense to me.
Susie, the Chiquita donates to dozens of organizations here in Nevada.
Right.
If you want a list, I would ask John to provide a list. I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. They fund all kinds of things, from the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to different foundations. There's nothing unusual or funny going on here. They're a good
I'm not saying
neighbor.
there is.
They're a good neighbor, and they look to donate where they can help.
I'm just asking for the
Like I
connection.
said, specifically, I ask them every year to help us with the Thanksgiving, feeding seniors at Thanksgiving that don't have anywhere else to go, which they generously do.
Okay, so that's the connection between the Lions Club and this board, and the landfill.
Right.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 2 minutes, 55 seconds. Nicely done. Okay, Darcy?
Yes, hi, I'm Darcy Stinson. My question actually had to do with the attorney that was here. And I guess I kind of want to know, it's about the agreement that you guys signed. And I don't have it in front of me, but in the agreement it talked about residents that live in Castaic. And then also in the agreement that has been expressed by Greg is about how they can take people, your board, whatever, to court for legal fees, expenditures. As for just a resident as myself or anybody, any one of you, you know, my insurance doesn't cover it, you guys do. Did you guys sign our rights away by that contract because it says it in there?
Let's get back to the basic tenet of the agreement.
Yes.
And the agreement is, we are going to be nice to you if you are nice to us.
Right.
We are going to do what the county has allowed us to do and negotiate directly with the community so that the funds stay in the community in return for your support of our expansion and new conditional use permit. That's essentially the agreement.
Essentially and positively, two different things. The agreement states, like I'm telling you, they can sue for whatever fees. As in myself in person, can they sue me?
No, Darcy, they
Then
cannot.
why does the contract state individually residents of
It
Castaic?
does not state
It
that
does.
you are in any way responsible for any legal fees whatsoever.
It says that they can come out and explore it.
It doesn't.
Do you have it in front of you so you can show me?
Again, this was not an agenda item
I
tonight. I'd be
understand.
happy to come. I'll come sit with you in Valverde,
Okay, I
we'll
would
have
love-
coffee, and we'll go over
Because
it.
that,
What was on the agenda tonight was the
Okay.
Public Records Act, so again, I am always trying to answer people's
I understand.
questions. I assure you, and I will sit with you, you are in no way ever legally bound to pay any legal fees to anyone at any time for what happens.
So just to clarify, you're a resident of Valverde?
yes.
Okay, so anything, the agreement speaks to, if the language is correct, and I think there's some comments in there that would limit it to family members and town council members, it doesn't say anything about residents of Valverde, so I think
It said, I also own property here in Castaic and have a residence here as well.
I think if you read the language, there are commas in there that.
I have.
So Darcy, do you have my number?
No, but I'm sure I can get it or see afterwards.
Yeah, I'll be happy to, I'll sit down with you, we'll go over it.
Right.
And again, I understand legal language is legal language, and people are worried about the specifics in here. What's going to happen at the discretion of the landfill is that if they feel we are violating the agreement, they are going to stop the funding. They have the ability to do that.
Okay,
That's
that's
what
fine.
it says. But I don't ever envision that happening, and I would imagine there are people on this board that are gonna speak out against it, and we know that, and I still don't think that's gonna affect what's gonna happen.
Okay.
So, but you are off the hook financially.
Okay, can I get that in writing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will absolutely do that. Absolutely. Okay, that is it on this item. I want to thank the sheriffs and the CHP and the fire people for, again, sitting through this. But we want to make sure everyone has the right information. Okay, Mr. Kunak is not, how could I forget? We have a report from the supervisor's office, Rosalind Whitman. A very thin and dark-haired and beautiful Rosalind Whitman.
Thank you. Just a few quick things. Some of this won't be new information because you probably read the paper, but the governor signed the plastic bag ban, which is now a statewide law that bans plastic bags and imposes a 10-cent fee on all paper bags. I'll read you a quote from the supervisor. This law only further hurts the California economy by jeopardizing thousands of manufacturing jobs and forcing consumers to pay additional fees to grocery stores, which is to say he is not in support of this. So I think probably all of you have been asked to pay 10 cents if you've gone to the market. And, yeah.
I haven't paid it one time yet.
I
Put it in the groceries.
Bring your own bags.
call it the bachelor bag because those of us that aren't married never remember to bring bags to the store.
So put it in your cart and load it in your bag when you get out
Not
here.
one dime, I'm gonna get my grade.
Speaking of seniors, another thing that was recently in the news is that the senior center has been looking to move for years, and they have never had the funding, nor have they had a location, nor have they had the needs assessment that they have now done to figure out what it is they want to do. So they have been working with the Committee on Aging, which is the foundation that runs the senior center, and they've been out soliciting for funding, and the county has given them $3 million that they can have to build a new senior center, but it's incumbent upon them raising the other $6 million for a total of 12, which they have told us that they are looking at an opportunity that will cost them about $12 million. So they've got that commitment from the county, but it's not going to go into their pocket until they've raised the rest of the funds. So it's pretty exciting for them. And that's, of course, a facility that's open to the entire family and to all seniors.
And I've been on record as saying our valley with 250 or 300,000 people probably needs 3 or 4 different senior centers, but a new one is a good start.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm getting older by the minute.
There's also been in the paper about the federal government moving to take over county jails. They are looking at taking over the county jails in order to see that ongoing mental health treatment and civil rights violations are remedied. The federal officials have acknowledged that the county has been addressing these issues for years and has successfully implemented a number of changes to the extent of their ability, and the extent of their ability has to do with full implementation is beyond the scope of the county resources, money again. So further discussions are continuing with the federal government and the county about the federal government coming into on consent decree to take over the jails and to implement some of these other programs. So the jury's still out on that. And those are the 3 of the main things that I wanted to share with you today. Any questions?
What does the supervisor feel? How does he feel about that last item?
He hasn't voiced an opinion yet because it hasn't come back to the board. So he very rarely tells us how he's going to vote on something until it actually happens, because he's interested at the board when items are before the board, in hearing the public testimony and hearing what the item is. He doesn't make a decision on it.
I've been on the mental ward floors in county jail downtown. I was a visitor. We are using county as the mental asylum now, and it's a tremendous, overwhelming job for the sheriffs to handle who are not medical, and there are medical professionals there, but it's asking a lot of people who are on a job designed to be, to run a facility where prisoners are incarcerated, not a facility where the mentally ill are incarcerated. So anyway, it's a tough deal.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, so Mr. Kudak is not with us tonight. He's flying back from New York. He may walk in at any moment. I will take over for public safety, and we're going to start with LA County Sheriff's Deputy Vernon. Okay, next, land use. We do have one, Dean is not here tonight. We do have a land use meeting coming up on Wednesday, November 5th. Is that right, John? Okay. But John from Tapia Ranch is here, and he is going to give us an update on what's going on with the soccer and the potential soccer and baseball fields.
Thank you, members of the town council. First, I want to thank you for the letter that you voted to send last month, and that it was sent. That letter reiterates your support for a connection road going through Tapia Ranch, through to Sorrel Del Valle, which connects Castaic and Santa Clarita. So hopefully, you know, that continued support will then roll right into to action with regional planning and projects go through. So thank you
Last
for.
Sunday night, we could have used that road.
Yeah, well, exactly. I was thinking
it was
back when you
dead
guys were
stop
talking
for
about
hours.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, not at all. So we're gearing up for a land use committee meeting on November 5th. We're gonna get our signs posted on our site next week and it's an advertised public hearing. So if we can get all our advertisement out next week, they'll be able to stay on course and get a land use, get you a land use committee on November 5th. As I've said previously, just to remind you that the State Town Council has supported Tapia Ranch in the past, but we're going through this because it's been almost 10 years now, and it's good that we revisit it, and then we get your renewed support for the Tapia Ranch project. But it'll go through your land use committee, then it'll come before you, so you're gonna have plenty of chances to see and hear all the details of our project. It should be coming up. Hopefully, after November 5th, it'll come very quickly, within a month or two after that. On the soccer fields, as I've said before, we're proposing soccer fields that will be conditioned right with our project at the Castaic Sports Complex. Right now, we're going through engineering on that. We had a community outreach meeting, and we got a lot of information, but there's easements to be plotted, there's drainage to be figured out, and we're still working with the oil lease operator too, because we're trying to confine that operator to a small space so that we can build soccer fields on the majority of that open ground there. And then lastly, an update is our EIR process, and we want to get our whole project approved, which will bring in the road, it'll bring in the soccer fields. We really want to try and get this done within the next year and a half. So our EIR, we're getting very close to having our first public hearing. It's called a scoping meeting. So that's the first kind of step in an EIR. Hopefully that'll happen within the next month or two as well. So with all these public hearings, we might try and combine some of them. So if we do, we'll ask and see if we can do that. But there's that scoping public hearing is, we'd like to have it here in front of everybody that normally would come and hear these things anyway. And then lastly, I said before that right now, we just want to move our project through quickly. And we are having some challenges, so from time to time, I'll keep you guys informed, and we'll ask, and we'll say, hey, we're getting stuck here, help us with a few things. So we appreciate the support you've given us so far, and we look forward to the next year, just really working closely together.
Thanks.
All right, if there are any questions I can answer? All right,
Any
thank you.
questions? We'll see you.
Okay, regarding the updating of the bylaws, we are currently in the status of still reviewing the bylaws, seeing what we need to update on them. So a meeting is to be determined, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Election committee. All right, so we've had a number of applications tonight, including returning council members. I know Jeff and Marty and Dean and Dawn are going to run again. We have Bonnie tonight turned in her application, and Lloyd, who is now gone, did as well. So what we have done is the election will be November 15th. We have extended the application period until next Friday, so November 24th, which gives people about 3 full weeks to make sure that anyone and everyone who's interested might be able to apply. The election will be on the 15th at the sports complex, and I'll confirm confirm that. Anything else for the election committee?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Where are elections held? Are they held here or?
No, they'll be held at the sports complex.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right. So just to be clear, there will be an election in November where you as a registered voter will go to your assigned polling place and you will choose congressmen and state senators and all kinds of other local and state and national elected offices. That is not us. We do not participate in that. We're not invited. We have a separate election held from 9 to 5, which is on a Saturday at the sports complex. And our election director is here. Mr. McGill, do you have anything you want to add, except how excited you are?
Just to reiterate how excited I am.
Okay. So we have, I picked the best guy to be our election chair. And he is impartial and efficient and is doing a great job. And I want to thank you for all your help. We did get out to the news outlets again today that we've extended the application process. Susie, go ahead.
Just wanted to know, who are the 4 that are up for re-election besides Bonnie and Jeff?
No,
All
we
5
have,
seats.
all 5 seats are open.
Oh,
4 are rerunning. Stephanie has chosen to serve 1 term.
oh, okay.
So at this point,
We still have time.
so at this point, she will not be running again, the other 4 will. 2 of them were appointed, so it's not even technically their second term. We had vacancies and they were appointed. And that's Dawn and Marty. And then Jeff will run again, and Dean will run again.
Oh,
So-
since you're here, Bonnie, you didn't put your email address on here. So,
I just recently sent you an email, so you should be able to,
yeah, I can utilize that, but, okay, so it's Region 2. Okay, and if for any reason someone is unopposed, we'll let you know.
okay.
Which means you'll require 1 vote.
Okay, consent calendar. Unless a council member or member of the audience has a question concerning a particular item and asks that it be withdrawn from the consent calendar, the consent items are approved with a single motion, without discussion by the town council. We have removed the treasurer's report, so right now we have the minutes from the regular meeting, the minutes in September, the minutes, fine, Roz, the minutes from the planning meeting in October, and the minutes from the special meeting in September. Can I get a motion for the consent calendar?
I move, we approve the consent calendar.
Can I get a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is unanimous. Very nicely done, for those of you paying attention. Okay, discussion action items, I see none. Correspondence, okay. We have 2 notice of public hearing. The first on November 4th, Verizon Wireless requesting a conditional use permit for a wireless telecommunications tower, 26650 the Old Road. I know exactly where that is. The second one is Verizon Wireless is requesting a conditional use permit for the continuing operation and maintenance of an existing wireless telecommunications facility, and that is 33700 West Lancaster Boulevard within the Castaic Canyon Zoned District. So, and the first one, it's on the old road within the unincorporated county area of Santa Clarita. I don't know where that is. But the old road hearing is November 4th, 9 a.m., regional planning. And the Lancaster Boulevard hearing is Tuesday, November 18th, 9 a.m., again, regional planning downtown. We also have,
Is that one on the old road, is that in Castaic, or is that?
you know, I'm going to pass that down to you and let you, it's 26650 the old road. Why don't you investigate that, Greg, and let us know what you find out about where that is. New Hall County Water District, you know, this is the earliest Wednesday we could have. As the 3rd Wednesday, if you do the math, the 15th is the earliest we could ever meet in a month. And this is for the Newhall County Water District regular meeting on October 9th. So we're just always a little late with them. Sorry about that. Regional planning.